Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening, Speaker Sir Murali Krishna Garu. And it's another very warm evening for all of us to have 2 hour session on the applicability of FCRA to CSR funding. Normally, we study FCRA in general for the trusts and other societies as a main part of it or as of importance. But with specifically its applicability to CSR funding is one area which SIRC thought would be of help to those who deal with CSR funding and its applicability, especially FCRA. Being global, we have been operating ourselves in a global village environment wherein there is no bar for getting funds across the globe. So under these circumstances, we thought it fit, even though it is not directly related to the tax audit season time, but we as at SIRC have to cover all the topics as far as possible, various different topics to see that there is a specialization or there is a understanding of all the areas of practice to upskill ourselves. So with this intention, we have conducted this program on this day in the absence of the chairman of our SIRC, Mr. Jalapati. I, Pannaraj, Secretary of SIRC, is here to welcome you all. So a hearty welcome to the speaker for the day, Murali Krishna Garu. Very warm welcome to you, sir. And also, I welcome very warmly all the delegates who have been here to know about the FCRA application to the CSR funding. So before I hand over the proceedings to the speaker, I'd just take 1 minute to briefly introduce him today. He is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and also the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He has overall more than 15 years of practical experience and practicing in the area of FEMA, FCRA, SEBI, ODI, ECB, and compounding proceedings, FIPB matters, company law matters, NBFC, public issues, takeover courts, private equity matters, conducting due diligence, valuation and capital market issues, etc., and also presented papers on these topics. He is actively engaged in activities of ICI and ICSI and regular faculty to the professional institutes and corporates, government bodies, and he has undertaken training programs and presented papers in various topics on these areas. So with this brief introduction, I once again welcome and request the paper presenter and the speaker of the day, CA Murali Krishna Gottipati Garu, to present your views. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Pannaraj, sir. Good evening, friends, and I am happy to meet you all. Due to the ongoing COVID, unfortunately, we are not able to meet in person, but I feel the warmthness in each one of you in presenting this session, and wish you a happy new year. I think this is maybe the first few sessions that have been conducted in 2022. So that way, I'm happy to present the session on FCRA. Generally, unlike in other sessions where we normally talk about many other topics, I'm very happy to see that we are also going out of the regular area of subjects that are being focused and bringing this part also into the consideration. And of late, because the way the government is implementing the concepts of CSR, of course, you must have seen the recent amendment that have come in director's report also, wherein a lot of emphasis is being laid down on the reporting in terms of the CSR funds being utilized or not utilized. If it is idle funding, should it go to the separate escrow account like scenario, that is a separate bank account, and should these funds goes into the government? So like that, a lot of changes are coming in terms of these particular compliances. So always now we need to look at, as part of the audit, as part of the certifications, how the CSR funding is evolving, and what is the interplay between FCRA and CSR in view of the lot of companies are having the inbound investment, that is we call it as FDI. So in these context, whether CSR and FCRA are going to play the role, I mean, what is the extent of the interplay between them, and generally with respect to the CSR funding, what is the sorry, with respect to the FCRA, what is the relevancy of the law to the extent, and who are called as foreign sources, what is called as foreign contribution, what if the company or the entity, like suppose we have the implementing agency, typically in the language of the CSR funding. So whether the implementing agency is required to make a lot of compliances, and generally, in addition to this, we are trying to also cover the concepts of FCRA so that we will have elaborate discussion with respect to the CSR funding vis-a-vis the sections under the FCRA. And please remember, these CSR funds, at least from 2021 onwards, a lot of emphasis has been laid down with respect to the unutilized funds. So one has to be very cautious, because the government henceforth may start enforcing these CSR provisions in a very scrupulous way. So that way one has to be very diligently observing the fund utilization, accumulation, withdrawal, non-utilization. All these things are going to be very detailed and in transparent way the government is going to observe. So it's a very fantastic topic one has to learn, and I'm sure we try to discuss the concepts in depth, and also we'll try to make this session to the extent possible interactive. And those who are having questions, obviously you can post in the appropriate window, and accordingly we will take up the queries in between at the end of the session, so that one should not feel like the questions are not being addressed. And we are trying to make the talk approximately for 1.5 hours or so, and thereafter we'll give adequate time for various questions that may come up, and we'll try to answer each and every question to the extent it is possible within the given constraint. But if suppose we are unable to answer any specific query, please feel free to send it to the SIRC or to my email ID, so that we don't have any issue to address them in an appropriate way. So please give me for a minute. I'm trying to share the screen. Yeah. Can you please confirm whether my sharing screen is?
Yes, visible.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So basically, when we see the concepts of FCRA, why this FCRA, what is the role of the FCRA? As such, if we observe, like many other laws, this is not a pure taxation or collection of tax or revenue kind of view. Rather, it is actually to protect the national interest, national security. So the concepts under FCRA has to be seen in very different way than the way we read or interpret the tax laws or the Companies Act and all those things, because the purpose is very different. And so whenever any regulation has been specified under FCRA, we have to see always from, first of all, from the national security, because any external elements can play a wrong approach or game to the country. So the government is more concerned about the impact of the funds from the foreign territories. So always we need to look at the primary objective as the national security. And the present FCRA Act, that is FCRA Act 2010, has been come with the concept of to consolidate all the laws with respect to the FCRA, both acceptance and utilization. And of it, the government is also making many changes with respect to the receipt of money, utilization of money, and everything else. So that is from September 2020, there is a sea change in terms of the implementation methodology. So the government is now more particular and concerned about the both receipt until end utilization. And the present FCRA has come into force from 1st May 2011. That is almost 10 years ago. The law has been made by repealing or replacing the previous law, that is Foreign Contribution Regulation Act 1976. And thereafter, the concept of FCRA is evolving with very rapidity, because of late, if we see the number of changes that are coming, the systems that are being in place, or the way of late the audits are also started. So the government is laying down heavy emphasis on enforcement of FCRA, both in terms of receipt and utilization. And FCRA law as such has a dual objective. One is to remove any difficulties faced by stakeholder, because we as per the previous experiences, any of the laws framed earlier, they were having certain limitations. So whatever concerns or limitations that have been expressed by various stakeholders, the government has considered and they have been brought into the new law. So that way FCRA 2010 has facilitated various things, including the enforcement. And other objective is to increase the transparency, because the way the funds are received, how it is being parked, how it is being utilized, and accountability. So this is applicable to all the non-profit organizations or non-government organizations, wherein the funds received in the form of the FCRA should not be misutilized, because we have seen in certain unscrupulous methods that have been followed, wherein the funds that are received in the form of FCRA have been diverted for certain agitations and the public gatherings where against the interest of the government or the public. So these funds have been deployed. So to receive the funds and ultimately its end utilization, everything now the government is expecting 100% transparency and accountability also. And since auditors need to certify the concepts of FCRA funds, again, the concept of FCRA, otherwise we receive from the foreign territory, same conditions are applicable even for CSR funds, be it funds, issued, paid by the Indian companies or even from foreign territory, because CSR is not meant only under the Companies Act. Please remember, though it is one of the places where the concept of CSR has been made mandatory for certain category of companies, because those companies which are making profit in excess of 5 crore per year, or having net worth of 500 crore or more, or turnover is more than 1000 crore, like that there is a laid down procedure. So those companies which are meeting these requirements under the Companies Act, they are required to spend not less than 2% of their average 3 years profit as per the preceding three financial years calculated profit they have to spend in the current year. So it means even the Indian companies which are otherwise considered to be domestic companies, even the funds that they are going to pay to the another implementing agency, they are subject to the scrutiny whether this is amounting to FCI, foreign contribution, because if it is a foreign contribution, unless the receiving entity is having necessary registration under FCRA, they can't take those funds from the Indian companies and use it in the form of the CSR funds, because now there is a lot of concept of social entrepreneur coming into picture. So those entrepreneurs who want to do genuinely to service to the society, but if the moment they are receiving funds from other corporate entity, and if they are falling under the concept of foreign contribution, then all the compliances laid down under FCRA need to be complied. So this FCRA law, as such, it is applicable to whole of India. It is also applicable to the NRIs who are citizens, residing outside India. But if they channelize the funds by collecting funds from outside India, obviously it is applicable. And it is also applicable to associate, branch or subsidiaries located outside India, but they are connected to the Indian companies. Okay. But the only exception normally that is there is if the transaction is happening between two governments, that is government of India and a foreign government. Unless otherwise there is any specific exemption, obviously the FCRA is applicable to all the cases. And if you see broadly the concept of FCRA, the law is divided into 56 sections, 28 rules, and 12 forms. Unlike many other laws which are voluminous and which are very dry in terms of the way section or the language is drafted, this law is comparatively very small in terms of the number of sections in the Act and in terms of the rules that are there in the Foreign Contribution Regulation Rules 2011. And there are not many forms also laid down, that is hardly 12 forms are there, but the purpose is also very categorically mentioned how these forms are applicable, I mean when they are applicable and how to make the filing. And unlike in previous cases, at least for last 6-7 years, most of the forms have been brought into the concept of e-filing. So one has to make all e-filings, whatever be the form, be it application for the registration or for the prior permission, until the last exit. Every compliance need to be made through online forms only. So that is the beauty this law has been achieved into. So one can see that how these provisions are been made effective. And Form FC1, whenever the forms which we are talking about, the 12 forms, Form FC1 is with respect to intimating the receipt of foreign contribution by way of gift or in the form of securities, that is shares, by a candidate who is standing for election. That is all for general elections, this is applicable. And Form FC2 is with respect to application for acceptance of foreign hospitality. That is, if any Indian employee of the government, if they are going to abroad to take any foreign contribution or taking any hospitality, so they are covered under Form FC2. Because why I am talking about these things is, first of all, unless we understand these basic concepts, the concept of CSR, and so if the CSR fund is in the form of foreign contribution, what complaints need to be made may not be clear. So we are trying to cover the basics to very critical aspects of the FCRA, so that each of the participant will have fair amount of understanding and they can happily implement, whenever they can give service to the customers whenever they see this. So Form FC3A is a form meant for the registration as a regular entity. When we say regular, now any regular registration is valid for 5 years. Hence, for every 5 years, there is a concept of application. So earlier it used to be only one form, but since that is after from 2011, there is a concept of renewal. Otherwise, earlier if you see before 2011, once registration has been granted, it was a permanent registration. There was no requirement of renewal. But from 2011 onwards, that is 1st May 2011 onwards, the moment this law has been enforced, the registration is having validity of maximum 5 years. So any application for new registration under the regular registration window, it has to be made in Form FC3A. And 3B talks about application for granting the prior permission. It means it is not regular registration, but as a specific permission. Somebody who is not going to take continuous, donations which are tantamounting to foreign contribution, they can take a specific permission for particular donor or particular amount. Thereby, until that fund is fully consumed, there is no requirement of the regular registration. And generally, this is being given whenever there is no concept of regular registration. Okay. And Form FC3C talks about the application for renewal, because FC3A talks about the new application and 3C refers to the renewal of the registration. So though whenever that regular registration is about to be expired, one has to make application form FC3C. And FC4 is an annual return basically. So all the entities who are having the regular registration or prior permission, in both cases, they need to file the form FC4. And this FC4 need to be filed within 9 months from the end of the financial year, in which the foreign contribution has been received or foreign contribution is outstanding, basically. So this FC4 need to be certified by a chartered accountant, and it has to be accompanied along with the specified financial statements. And normally the financial statements are in the nature of receipts and payment statement, income and expenditure statement, balance sheet, and connected any other workings that are very much relevant for the return. So these are the documents. Whenever the entity has received foreign contribution, be it a CSR fund or non-CSR fund, they need to file this. Okay, and Form FC5 which used to be there, they have been removed because from September 2020, the concept of transfer from this particular, from recipient of fund to another is not possible. It has been removed. So FC5 is no more. FC6A is referring to any intimation to be made to the MHA, that is the Minister of Home Affairs, whenever there is change of name or change of address, whether within the state or outside. So FC6A need to be filed. 6B talks about intimation in terms of change of nature or its aims of the organization or objects for which it has been registered earlier. And whenever there is any change with respect to prior permission, also it has to be made in the form FC6B. And 6C is recently introduced because whenever there is change in designated bank account, for the sake of understanding, all foreign contribution related funds, even domestic funds which are amounting to foreign contribution, they need to be deposited only in the designated bank account. It cannot be deposited in anywhere. So it has to be deposited, parked, underutilized only through the designated bank account. Okay, and the bank branch and account number, everything need to be reported to the MHA so that they will take appropriate action in case of the erring entity. That's why one has to be very clear. This has to be reported. And 6D, that is form FC6D, talks about intimating any additional bank accounts that are open for the purpose of utilization. So maybe here the word is, one is receipt of FC into designated bank account, and other one is utilization account, because sometimes we may have multiple accounts, for one for receipt, other one is for utilization. And form FC6E is with respect to intimating the any changes in the key members of the association, like it could be key managerial persons or trustees or members, governing body members, like that we can mention. Nothing but typically KMP, key managerial persons of the organization. And FC7 is with respect to application for surrendering the registration of the entity. So basically, we need to see that the registration, whenever voluntarily the organization want to surrender, they can file in form FC7. So these are the 12 forms we were referring. And when we call any donor as a foreign source, because here it's not Indian entity is what going to receive the money from foreign source. So the Indian entity can be, the donor can be even an Indian company or Indian society or a trust, which may fall under the category of foreign source. That's why we must be very categorical, very clear on this particular matter. So generally, because CSR fund can be received from abroad or can be received within India. So who is called as foreign source? Please remember, foreign contribution is directly correlated with the foreign source. So unless the donor, that is the payer, happen to be a foreign source, the donation will not be considered as a foreign contribution. So irrespective of currency, always the important fact we need to look at it is who is the foreign source. So as far as the foreign source definition is concerned under section 21J, any government of foreign country or its agency comes under the foreign source. All international agencies, excluding the United Nations or any specialized agencies, all international agencies always fall under the foreign source. a company incorporated in a foreign country, because as we know, all foreign companies fall under the foreign source, and any multinational companies. Again, multinational companies means companies which are owned and controlled by foreigners. But if the MNC has a company in India, that's where again our today's topic is more relevant, when it may come under the concept of the foreign source. Foreign citizens, even those individuals earlier having Indian citizenship, but if they surrender the citizenship and become when citizens of foreign country, even those foreign citizens will be falling under the concept of the foreign source. Okay. Any trade union in any foreign country, because CSR fund also, please remember, under Companies Act or other things, but if the CSR fund is coming from abroad into the implementing agency, then also we need to look at the concept of the foreign source. So any trade union in any foreign country is obviously a foreign source. Any foreign trust or foundation which is mainly financed by foreign territory funds. Suppose, say, there is any government or non-government entity which is registered as a foreign trust. If they are being primarily financed by the foreign sources, obviously, the concept of foreign source will come into picture. Any society or a club or a BOI or AOP, even if it is reached outside India, then that particular funds coming into India will be considered the foreign source. Because unless we understand foreign source, the concept of foreign contribution wouldn't be clear. And any Indian company, which actually this definition as given at the time of notification of the law, first we are trying to explain. But again, we will give a little bit elaboration when this may not be coming under the concept of foreign contribution. So any Indian company, if its capital in excess of 50% or more is held by any of the previous category of companies, like if it is held by foreign government, if it is held by another foreign company, or if it is held by any trade union or a foreign trust, etc. So if an Indian company is registered wherein the capital in excess of 50% is held by any of the previously listed foreign sources, they also can become, the company is normally considered to be foreign source, but a proviso has been inserted with retrospective effect from the time the law has been notified, wherein it says an Indian company will not be considered as a foreign source if its capital, even if it is more than 50% is held by the foreign source, but if the capital is held in compliance of the FEMA, that is Foreign Exchange Management Act. If the capital is held within the conditions and boundaries as specified under FEMA, then the share capital, even if it is in excess of 50%, the Indian company will not be treated as a foreign source. So here only twin conditions we need to see. One is there is an FDI, and FDI is in excess of half of the capital, but the FDI has come in compliance under the FEMA. And if there are any sectoral caps, such as say, if you take say telecom for example, normally up to 74% can be held by the foreign sources. Foreign individuals, companies, etc. But if the share capital is in excess of 50%, but it is less than 74% in due compliance of the FEMA, then the telecom company which is registered in India will not be treated as a foreign source. So to understand FCRA, we need to understand the regulations under FEMA. So that is the dual linkage that has been laid down. So one has to check that whether the Indian company share capital is held by foreign sources or not. If so, whether the holding is in proper compliance of the FEMA, and if there are any sectoral limits, whether the share capital is held within that sectoral capital or not. Otherwise, the Indian company can be treated as the foreign source. So whenever the CSR fund is coming from this kind of Indian companies, normally we need to take a declaration stating that whether the Indian donor happen to be a foreign source or not? Are they exempted from falling in the definition of the foreign source? So this is the entire concept laid down is what is the share capital of the donor, which is an Indian company, which is supposed to spend the funds under the Companies Act as a CSR fund. And another thing is the CSR fund may not be coming only under the Companies Act. It may be even under the pollution control laws. Because if you observe, to give pollution control approval, normally the PCB, that is the Pollution Control Board, may lay down a condition that 2% of the project cost has to be spent under the CSR. Because knowingly or unknowingly, the company, while it is establishing its business activity, suppose setting up a factory, maybe they are dislocating certain species, or they are dislocating the people, or they are dislocating certain other natural resources. Naturally, the company which is implementing such project has to spend as a CSR funding. So whether the CSR funding is under the Companies Act or it is under any other laid down laws in India, we need to follow these particular conditions. Okay, so here the sum and substance is whenever Indian company, if the share capital is more than 50% is held by foreign shareholders, we need to be very cautious. We need to be very observing that whether the Indian company has complied the FDA regulations under FEMA. Maybe it could be an approval from FIPB, that is earlier FIPB, or presently it is Foreign Investment Facilitation Portal, that is FIFP, or it could be even filing a simple form called Form FCGPR or Form FCTRS. Unless all these complaints are properly made, the Indian company, just because it is registered in India, we can't call it as a foreign source. Okay, so this is the condition one has to be looking at. And what is called as foreign contribution? So here, any contribution received from foreign source to the Indian organization is normally called a foreign contribution. So unless the concept of foreign source is complied, fulfilled or attracted, the donation made by such party or person will not be considered as the foreign contribution. Okay, so the donation, delivery, transfer, etc. of a foreign source, foreign contribution or a foreign fund is called as the foreign contribution. It could be any currency, because the donation or delivery need not be always in foreign currency. Even an Indian currency can be considered the foreign contribution the moment payer happened to be a foreign source. So here the critical crux is who is the payer. If the payer happened to be foreign source, then any currency they donate, be it Indian currency or a foreign currency, it will be treated as a foreign contribution. That's why just because one Indian company is paying the CSR fund in INR, we can't take the stand and position saying that it is not a foreign contribution. So here the underlying point is not the currency, but purely donor. If the donor fulfill the condition of foreign source, their donation in any currency, or be it in currency or in kind, can be treated as the foreign contribution. That's what we need to be very clear and cautious. And it can be in the form of shares or securities. The security as defined in the particularly with respect to the Securities Contract Regulation Act, if you refer, there are multiple categories like shares, preference shares, debenture, bonds, etc. So all those securities will be considered the foreign contribution. Donation of any article on lease by foreign source without any consideration. Even a leasing transaction of a asset can be treated as a foreign contribution if the lease is without any specific consideration. If it is free of any cost, obviously the lease is considered to be donation. Okay, and any article donating in kind, that is an article, if the market value of article is more than 25,000 rupees. So here always the threshold limit is 25,000 rupees. If the value is less than that, It may not be treated as the in-kind donation falling under the concept of foreign contribution. Okay. Yeah, please give me a minute. Okay. So, and another beauty of this law is even foreign contribution includes the secondary income. The secondary income made out of the deposit of the primary receipt, that is primary donation. So any interest income generated out of the deposits or out of the investments of into eligible assets, that secondary income is also called as foreign contribution. So that's why we have to see that the CSR contribution received in primary or secondary both need to comply the concept of the foreign contribution. So if the primary asset is exempted from foreign contribution, it is happy. The secondary income also goes out of the concept of the foreign contribution. Okay. And any infusion of foreign share capital in a company registered under the Companies Act. Because already I told you, if the shares are held without proper commercial requirement, like suppose if there is no commercial prudence, just because somebody has funded it without any activity. But here, one important thing is, in case the entity, the receiving entity, is registered as a company under Section 8 of Companies Act 2013, or maybe earlier Section 25 under the Companies Act 1956. So whether it is 8 or Section 25 company, if the share capital is held by the foreign entities, even that capital infusion can be considered as the foreign contribution, because obviously the ownership is emanating from the abroad. So we need to be very cautious and clear that when this may become foreign contribution. This is very important, one has to understand and apply. And unsecured loans are loans at subsidized rate. Even sometime this could be one of the way foreign contribution may be given. So even just because it is a loan, we can't ignore it as a non-FCRA fund. But so long the loan is with respect to the interest parity, then we can take a defense. But generally, all unsecured loans or loans at a subsidized rate may be treated as a foreign contribution unless they specify that there is a commercial prudence. So here, agreement with respect to the loan is also very important. Okay. And please remember, even an Indian entity which has received foreign contribution from abroad, if they give in turn this particular fund as a CSR fund, like an Indian company which is A, if they receive foreign contribution from X, which is a foreign entity, even A, which is received foreign contribution and giving that particular fund into another entity, is also falling under the concept of foreign contribution, because they are passing through the foreign contribution received from another entity. So that's why we have to be very clear that its own contribution may not be considered to be foreign contribution, but passing through the Indian entity of CSR fund also we need to be verified. Okay. Generally, foreign contribution does not include any earning from foreign clients or from foreign customers by way of selling goods or provision of services. So obviously, being it's a revenue, it's not a contribution. So obviously, it is exempted. And any donations by NRIs. Basically, NRI means an Indian citizen residing abroad. Any donation received from him in any currency, including even if they give it in foreign currency, but if the source, that is, if the donor happened to be NRI, he is not considered to be foreign contribution or foreign source. So that's why here the mute point is always it is not with respect to the currency, it is with respect to the payer. So that's why we need to look from always this particular aspect. Okay. And any article gifted which is less than 25,000 rupees. So even under CSR fund, if the article gifted is less than 25,000, even if donor happened to be a foreign source, still it doesn't fall under the foreign contribution. and any fee received with respect to any delegation or participation in a program conducted by the Indian entity but in a location outside India. So any fee paid by the delegates or participants, that will not fall under the foreign contribution. And any charges or fees collected by the temples for any services rendered from the clients typically, okay, because they are rendering service, that also will go out of the concept of the foreign contribution. And any amount received with respect to fulfilling the contractual obligations, even that also will not be called as foreign contribution. Okay, so these are the critical aspects with respect to foreign source, foreign contribution. So, and another thing is, of course, this point may not be directly connected to CSR, but many times we see that there could be a pass through. So that's why we are trying to bring each and every point which may be treated as a foreign contribution. So any candidate standing for the general election, obviously he cannot receive or accept any foreign contribution. And any correspondent or a columnist, cartoonist, etc., who is connected to the newspapers or electronic media, obviously they also cannot receive any foreign contribution, because obviously foreign contribution can influence the people who are involved in these kind of activity or services. Any judge or a government servant or employee which of any body corporate which is owned or controlled by the government, even those employees cannot receive foreign contribution. Any member of any legislature, including panchayat, obviously again these people will be considered as the public representatives, so obviously they cannot receive any foreign contribution. Okay, any political party or any of its office bearers, they cannot receive the foreign contribution. Any organization which is specified as a political organization but it's not a political party, so any organization of political nature as may be specified by the central government, they cannot also receive any foreign contribution. And obviously they can't give it this to any other, we call it as typically sub granting. So they can't even do sub granting to any other Indian organization. Any association or a company which is engaged into print media, so be it a current affairs, visual news, or any such program that they are running, they can't receive any foreign contribution. Okay, but what are the exceptions to these restrictions? Basically, the people or persons who are listed in the preceding slide, they may accept foreign contribution or foreign, I don't call it a foreign contribution, but it is a foreign source of funds. If the money is paid by way of a salary or wages or in the form of any other remuneration like consulting charges and all those things, by way of payment in the course of international trade or commerce, obviously this is again a kind of revenue that is been considered and paid for, offer for taxes in India. And as an agent of the foreign source for transactions made by the foreign source with the central or state government. Obviously, this is government to government, but having some relevancy to the exceptional situations. And by way of any gift as a part of the member of the Indian delegation. So if somebody goes outside India, so obviously somebody may receive them with a giving some a token of appreciation or token of love, they may give some gifts. So obviously those gifts cannot be considered as the foreign contributions. And from relatives, if the amount is less than a lakh rupee. So if the Indian person is receiving from his relatives, if the people who are listed in section 3, if they receive from any of the relatives within the definition of Companies Act, generally we look at, even that donation or gift is not considered to be a foreign contribution. And any amount received in the ordinary course of business or by way of scholarship and stipend, these are the typical the revenue nature of receipts. Naturally they will not fall under the foreign contribution, right? Another thing is, the moment it is a foreign contribution, the receipt, parking of the funds and end utilization, everything has to happen through a designated bank account only, because this anyway we covered in the previous session, but for the sake of abundant clarity, I'm just reiterating that. So both receipt, parking, or temporarily depositing in any assets, or ultimate consumption, until that entire end to end, the fund has to be routed through a designated bank account only. And the association should keep and full accounting in terms of who are the donors, what is their location from where the money has been received, and what is the purpose of the donation. So even an Indian company paying CSR fund to another implementing agency, they have to specify what is the purpose for which this amount has to be used. Is it going to be a revenue kind of donation, or is it going to be towards the corpus fund, or it is the endowment fund? So like that, the purpose has to be specified by the payer. Okay. And any corpus donation, it has to be supported by the consent of the donor. It means the donor has to specify that this particular transaction should be used only for the purpose of the corpus funds. It means it has to be used as a capital. Okay, it cannot be used for the day-to-day expenditure. Normally this corpus donation is meant for building some assets, like creating a building, or say for purchasing of furniture, like that. It should be in the nature of the capital activity only. Okay. And any donation received through donation box, like we call it as blind donations. So the donor is not known. So if the donation happened in foreign currency, but if the foreign currency is deposited in donation box, obviously there is no linkage between the payer versus the currency that they pay. Hence, any foreign currency donation will be treated as the foreign contribution only. Obviously, that is a natural logic, because nobody can say a foreign Indian resident has paid in foreign contribution, right? I mean, foreign currency. So that's why the simple thinking is every foreign currency deposited into a donation box should be treated as the foreign contribution. So yeah, please give a minute. Another important thing is, whenever it is a foreign contribution, there is a restriction that how much percentage of the foreign contribution can be used towards the administrative expenditure. So here, from 2020 September, there is an amendment where it says the administrative expenditure should not exceed 20% of the foreign contribution. So the moment, whether it is CSR fund or any regular donation, out of the foreign contribution, there is a limit of up to maximum 20% that can be used in the for the purpose of admin expenditure. What is admin expenditure anyway? We have a separate slide. We will go there. But this limit we need to remember. And foreign contribution cannot be invested in speculative business. So what is speculative business? Of course, there is a separate activity, as a slide that I am going to cover. But another thing is, foreign contribution cannot be invested in the form of a speculative activity. And every asset purchased out of the foreign contribution should be acquired in the name of the association only. It cannot be acquired in the name of the trustee, or the member, and all those things are not permissible. So it should be held in the name of the association only. And all the interest and the primary, secondary income earned out of the foreign contribution also should be utilized towards the projects the donor has specified. Like one project amount may be spent for interest on earned out of the surplus of one project, may be used for another project, unless otherwise the donor specifies that his donation and interest on should be used only to a specific project. If that is the condition, obviously accordingly the foreign contribution need to be utilized. But if there is no restriction on interest on, but ultimately the fund should be used only for the projects of the association. It cannot be sub-granted. Okay. Then coming to what is the admin expenditure. Obviously, one has to see what is definition of the admin expenditure? Every expenditure cannot be called as admin expenditure. So all the salary, wages, or travel expenditure, or any remuneration paid to the members of the executive committee or the governing body, obviously it is a admin expenditure. They are having overhead kind of scenario. So their cost and salary, everything will go into the admin expenditure. All expenses incurred towards hiring of personnel for management activities of the company or salaries of their salaries, etc. Everything will go into the concept of the admin expenditure. It's a common sense and logic thing, right? All expenses related to the utilities like electricity, water, postal, printing, telephone, everything will go into the concept of the admin expenditure. And any kind of transportation, unless it is directly relevant for the project activity, all those expenditure will go into the concept of the admin expenditure only. Okay. Cost of accounting and administration of funds. Obviously, this is, naturally it's an, admin category of expenditure. So even audit, everything will go into the concept of the admin expenditure only. And expenses incurred towards running and maintenance of vehicles. Again, if these vehicles which are not directly used for the purpose of the project, like suppose you take ambulance, so maintaining ambulance where it is meant for supporting the needy people, that ambulance expenditure may go into the project expenditure. But if it is a regular vehicles like cars, meant for transportation of the people who are not directly involved in the project activity, or those kind of vehicles which are directly used for the project activity, that particular running and maintenance cost will not be part of the admin expenditure. Those vehicles which are not directly involved shall be treated as the admin expenditure. And cost of filing or submission of any reports, preparation, filing, etc. Obviously, it will go into admin expenditure. Legal and professional charges. So this also obviously naturally we understand it is a part of the admin expenditure. Rent of premises, repairs and maintenance to such premises will also go into the concept of admin expenditure. But if the premises is primarily used for the project category, like suppose say one auditorium is being used to train the needy people, then that auditorium rent will not go into the admin expenditure. Obviously it will go into the concept of the project expenditure. But if it is like office or some incidental infrastructure, they will go into the admin expenditure. So we must be having these boundaries. And all the salaries and remunerations with respect to the persons engaged directly in the project, it will go into project expenditure. It will not include into the admin expenditure. And in case of those entities which are into research, the salaries paid to such a research persons is also going to the project expenditure. It will not be going into admin expenditure. And the salaries of doctors, in case suppose the organization is running a hospital, naturally the doctors, the nurse, paramedical team, so all those salaries will be part of the project expenditure. But otherwise, largely admin related salaries will go into admin expenditure. That's what we must be clear on this. Then what is the speculative business? Naturally, we need to understand when it will be treated as a speculative business. So any activity of investing in a speculative category, like suppose investment into shares, investment into mutual fund. But if it is investment into a debt instrument, it will not be considered as the speculative business. Naturally, because if there is no too much risk involved in case of certain debt-oriented investments. But if it is a equity-oriented instruments or instruments which are having underlying risk into the equity, that will be considered as a speculative business. And any CSR fund which is considered to be foreign contribution, that cannot be invested in the form of the speculative assets or speculative activity. So this is what again is a broad guideline. The speculative business here is speculative assets being acquired with the source of the foreign contribution. Okay. The another change, of late the government that has brought is with respect to transfer of funds from foreign contribution to another entity. Like suppose there are three entities, one is the donor, other one is recipient organization, let's say A, and they cannot subgrant this to another organization called B. Of course, this kind of facility used to be there before this amendment made in September 2020. Prior to that, there used to be a concept that the recipient organization can do subgranting to another organization, provided the second entity which is going to receive this money has applicable registration category under the FCRA. But now they have restricted this. I mean, the government has taken away the concept of subgranting. The fund has to be used only by the recipient. Okay. So here, if suppose CSR funds also, if it is falling under the category of foreign contribution, the organization, the implementing agency, which is receiving this money, only has to implement this. But it can engage the other agencies on a service basis, but not as a subgrant. So what is meant by subgrant here? When the organization give away the money along with all risks and responsibilities. That's where we call it as subgranting. But if suppose the payment is made as part of the service that is being received, that is not a subgrant, rather we call it as the implementation. So we have to draw this line that are we giving away the money along with the control. The control is obviously how it is being used. We are not going to monitor. Simply we are going to do sub donation. Okay. So here from this amendment that has come in September 2020, any fund transfer from the recipient, that is donee, is prohibited. Okay. And it may be recalled that as per the Companies Act, the amendment that have been made, now all organizations, that is implementing agency, are not eligible to receive CSR funds as a donation unless the details of such implementing agency are given in the form of Form CSR1, and if it is not filed with the MCA, then the implementing agency cannot receive CSR funds. It means now multiple checks are there. The implementing agency should have filed Form CSR1 as per Companies Act and rules made thereunder with respect to CSR funding, and then we need to check also whether the CSR fund is falling in the bracket of the foreign contribution. Okay, but now no subgranting is permissible. That's what the emphasis we need to understand. Of course, this has come from September 2020. So prior to that, there used to be a provision provided both the grantor and subgrantee are having applicable registration under FCRA law. Okay. Yeah. So as I was mentioning, basically to receive any foreign contribution, the recipient has to open a separate account. But again, in September 2020, there is one critical amendment that has come into picture. That is opening a separate bank account with State Bank of India, New Delhi main branch. From this particular day, of course, they are given relaxation almost up to 31/3/2021. So on or before 31/3/2021, all existing organizations, they were supposed to open a separate bank account with the State Bank of India, New Delhi main branch only. From that only the funds can be received. So then obviously what will happen? If the Indian CSR organization, which has to spend the CSR fund, even if the payment is made in INR, if the source happened to be, I mean, the Indian company happened to be falling into the category of foreign source, then this fund has to be deposited only into the SBI New Delhi main branch. Okay. So the foreign contribution related designated account is maintained only in INR, not in foreign currency. So any amount, be it INR funds, that Indian rupees, or foreign funds, ultimately they need to be deposited into designated foreign currency account, foreign contribution account, if the donor happened to be a foreign source. So this we need to check it in each transaction wise. By each transaction we need to validate whether the donor happened to be foreign source. If it is foreign source, naturally the payment is foreign contribution. Okay, and the implementing agencies, in case of CSR fund, they need to maintain separate records exclusively meant for foreign currency receipt and until ultimate utilization. So we need to, the recipient should demonstrate that it is able to identify both receipt and up to end utilization. If sometime if there is a mixing of the funds, mixing of the bank accounts or records in the reporting. So then still we need to able to specify that because of these records, the concept of receipt, depositing and end use is fully and completely disclosed. Okay, and obviously then the question comes, what is the accounting standard to be followed? So accounting standard is obviously depending upon the entity which is receiving the contribution, foreign contribution. If suppose if it's a company, naturally the accounting standards under Companies Act need to be complied. If it is not a company, then the concept of accounting standards as applicable to a firm, or suppose if it is a trust, under income tax, if wherever there is any specific standards that we need to follow. Okay, and we can't deposit the non-foreign contribution funds into the foreign contribution account. So there should be absolutely, no mixing of funds is permissible, both at the time of utilization or at the time of receipt. In all respects, the funds should not be mixed. So from receipt until last end use, the foreign contribution is like a separate channel. So they have to be, received and maintained in a separate bank accounts only. And in case there are any investments made, the association has to maintain separate register with respect to the investments made out of the foreign contribution. And normally this investment register should be submitted for the audit. So when I say audit, it is regular certification by chartered accountant, or it could be the auditors appointed by the MHA. MHA means the Minister of Home Affairs I am talking about. Okay, and we are very interested to know that of late the MHA is actively engaging in audits. Like we have seen one organization whose audits, whose accounts are audited almost after 20 years of existence. So now we understood that the Ministry of Home Affairs is going to review the accounts of all the registered organizations. If not, say every year, at least once in 5 years, they are going to do thorough review. So the CSR funds also, if the donor happened to be a foreign source, accordingly, all these complaints need to be made. And the records, utilization and everything is subject to until last rupee is utilized fully. It means we cannot abruptly go out of the FC registration, that is foreign contribution registration. The moment funds are received, until a complete amount is utilized and we confirm that entire fund has been consumed, until that time registration has to be kept valid. The organization cannot go out of the FC registration just like that. Okay, because sometimes the organization may think like, okay, I have received the funds, now let me walk out of this particular registration because it is becoming rigorous or vigorous. No, that's not possible. Until the complete fund has been utilized, the registration has to be kept alive. Okay, and any interest earned or any income earned out of the FD or Government of India bonds or any such debt security, the interest has to be deposited again into the foreign contribution related account only. Again, we cannot divert secondary income into a non-FCRA designated account. Okay, because secondary income and primary both are, so long it is a foreign source related fund, it has to go and sit in the foreign contribution related designated bank accounts only. And normally, another important thing is the organization which has received foreign security as a donation, like it means foreign shares or foreign debt funds, can it be kept in the form of the same form? We don't think so, because under income tax law, there is a restriction that the Indian Trust Society can never keep the foreign securities as eligible assets, because this will come into the concept of the exemption of the income under the income tax law, and also ATG related, like 12A, 12A and ATG, these sections will come into the play. So accordingly, the income tax law also has an additional role to play in terms of the foreign sources and foreign contribution. Okay. And every kind of fund, because it could be a general fund or it could be endowment fund, it could be a corpus fund, all these things should be reflected in the books of accounts. Now that's why generally we are suggesting to maintain sub accounts wherein the main account is having the segregation of funds, and each fund is parked in, or each project related fund is parked into a separate bank account, and we can see through that particular bank account to identify the movement of funds, that is utilization, etc., out of the particular fund. So that way, happily, one can see the transparent record. And any asset created or purchased out of the foreign contribution, it has to be recorded in separate books of accounts. Obviously, otherwise, how one can say that yes, this asset is not diverted for a non-foreign contribution purpose. So one has to check this accordingly. It has to be maintained. And any association, even if, again, because our today's session is all about CSR fund, but primarily I'm referring to CSR fund, but it could be non-CSR fund concept also may be there. A simple donation also may be there. So if the amount is in excess of 1 crore per financial year, the receiving entity has to maintain this data, disclose this data in their website. Obviously, again, that is to maintain that the public is aware of, if it is higher volume and value is been associated to a particular organization, the public should know that okay, this organization is receiving more funds. For that, they wanted to maintain that it's a mandatory. If the value of foreign contribution is in excess of 1 crore per financial year, naturally, the organization has to publish those statistics in their website. What if the organization doesn't have a website? Naturally, then they have to make a filing with the MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, on every quarter basis. And Ministry of Home Affairs, in turn, they disclose this data on their website. So one or other way, whether it is the organization's website or MHA website, the data has to be published in very clear form. Then naturally there is a disclosure. So with respect to the annual return, so FC4, of course, earlier the form is known as form FC6, has to be filed within 9 months from the end of the financial year. That is on or before 31st December. Like, apart from income tax deadline with respect to the individuals, we were having similar deadline under Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. So December 31st, this has to be on or before December 31st, this has to be filed. And as I was mentioning earlier, so the FC4 need to be appended, or we need to attach statement of accounts such as income and expenditure statement, receipts and payment statement, balance sheet, and there could be any other relevant data that also need to be submitted. And this FC4 need to be certified by a chartered accountant. So naturally, we need to do as good as audit. So though we don't call it as an audit because it's a certificate, naturally we need to do extensive review just to see that each and every transaction related to a foreign contribution are properly accounted and there is no non-compliance. And if there is a non-compliance, naturally we need to bring those facts into the certificate. Okay. And this FC4, naturally it will give the detail whether how much amount has been received in exclusive bank account, how these funds are used with other bank accounts. Like movement of funds also we need to measure. Accordingly, the certificate has to cover how much funds have been received to designated account and how it has been used in the life cycle. Okay, and normal statement of foreign contribution, there is a bank account also need to be certified along with need to be submitted along with the form FC4. So not only the record but the proof of accounts emanating from bank account need to be submitted into this particular form FC4. And this is an online form. Of course, there is a digital signature. So like any other form that we have been submitting in the form of the electronic records, same way we need to submit this form FC4, and the due date is, as I mentioned, 31st December. Okay, and unfortunately there was no extension here also. So we were already disturbed with respect to the concept of not giving the extension by the Ministry of Finance with respect to the income tax returns. But here also we have seen MHA also has not given any extension, in spite of knowing the fact that there are certain challenges by the handled by the organizations or professionals. Okay. Fine. The books, with respect to the foreign contribution, they have to be kept for 6 years. Minimum of 6 years period they need to be maintained. And so obviously this is more or less aligned to the income tax law. And but if it is a company, obviously it will go into 8 years. When I say company, the receiving organization, they have to maintain for 8 years. But under FCRA law, the books and account statement have to be kept for minimum 6 years. And what if there is no foreign contribution during the current year? Obviously, there is a natural scenario that there could be zero receipts in a particular year. Even in the nil return also need to be filed in the specified timeline. So not only the year in which money has been received, which is a foreign contribution, but otherwise even for nil return also need to be filed within the same date. And basically non-submission will attract the non-compliance, and accordingly there is a penalty, and there are also punitive punishment in terms of the suspending the registration. So not only penalty, there could be what you call statutory enforcement in terms of the suspending or cancelling the registration of the organizations. So one has to be very clear. This data has to be, the document has to be submitted in very meticulous manner. Okay. And if suppose it's subject to renewal, naturally, there is a concept of suspending the renewal also. They will not process the renewal. Accordingly, it's going to have bigger impact on the organization. Okay. Then what is the fee generally that need to be paid? So for the certificate of registration, there is a nominal fee of 3,000 rupees. In case it is a prior permission case, that is, we take the permission of the MHA for each donor and amount that they are going to donate. Then for prior permission, it is 5,000 rupees. For any renewal of certificate, naturally it is 50% of the primary amount, that is up to 1,500, sorry. And if there is any late filing, that is because generally the renewal has to be made in case the project is going into multiple years. Like the amount is received a crore rupee, this 1 crore is spent across 1, 2 or more financial years. That we call it a multi-year project. In case of multi-year project, the application has to be filed at least 12 months before the renewal date. Okay. And in case it is a single year projects, then at least 6 months before the due date, the renewal application has to be submitted. And due to such limitation, of course, recently the Ministry of Home Affairs wide an extension circular given on 30th December 2021. They extended all the renewals of registration up to 31st March 2022. They are given almost 3 months extension, because earlier it was extended from September to December. Then again from December they extended to another 3 months. So now any registration whose certificate is subject to renewal, if the application is submitted towards the renewal, then naturally the registration is valid up to 31st March 2022. And any delay in filing may badly impact the existing registration or its renewal, because again we have multiple penalties with respect to the late filing fee. Yeah. So as I'm mentioning, so what is the validity of the regular registration? It is 5 years. Okay. So if the organizations are existing prior to coming into force of the new law, that is 1st May 2011, their renewal is due for every 5 years on or after 1/5/2011. And if the registration has come after the 1/5/2011, then up to every 5 years they have to go. So now we have seen, two renewals, or second renewal is coming for those organizations which are existing prior to 2011. But those organizations which are registered on or after 1/5/2011, they have to go for every 5 years related this thing. And of course, renewal application I mentioned, is it a multi-year project or single year project? Accordingly, we have to see this particular requirement. When we need to file the application. So basically, this is the new requirement, as I mentioned, that all organizations which are supposed to receive foreign contribution, they have to maintain and account. They have to open account and they have to maintain it, mainly with State Bank of India, New Delhi main branch. Naturally, to just now the government want to monitor entire receipt, at least in the first drop of the funds, only through this particular SBI New Delhi main branch. Okay, and the organization can have multiple accounts both for inter-transfers and its utilization. But first receipt must be always at the SBI New Delhi main branch. Okay, and another thing is whether organization can open savings account. That is the donee. Can they maintain savings account? Of course, yes, because there is an exception where it says for NGOs or non-profit organization, opening the savings accounts is permissible. So the organization can maintain the account in the form of current account or savings account, or the amount can be parked in the form of FD and other category of securities. Okay. What if there is a non-compliance? Like I was mentioning, due date is 31st December. So if the organization has not submitted the annual return within that 9 months period, and if the delay is up to 90 days, then there is a penalty, which is either 2% of the foreign contribution received during the year in which there is a delay, or 10,000 rupees, whichever is higher. Okay, and basically, if the amount is more than whichever is lower, not whichever is higher, whichever is lower, and if the amount if the delay is after 90 days but up to 180 days, then 3% is the amount, and if it is more than 180 days, 5% of the amount. And like again, there is 50,000, a lakh rupee, like that we need to see, depending upon the delay. So even now, delay in filing also have monetary impact, as well as there is an impact with respect to the ability of renewal. Okay, and this may also impact in terms of the validity of the certificate. That we need to be very clear. And in case the organization has either received or deposited or utilized the amount which is not in the nature of the designated FCR account, still for that also there is a separate penalty. So if suppose the amounts are accepted without registration and the instruments are kept in the form, they have not been deposited into the bank account, it means we have received and kept in our custody, then the minimum penalty is 10,000 rupees or 2% of the foreign contribution, whichever is higher. But if suppose the amount is also deposited in the bank account, then it is 25,000 rupees or 3% of the foreign contribution, whichever is higher. It means even for receiving but not depositing also there is a penalty. So one has to be cautious. Just because we are not deposited, we can't get away from penalties. Okay. And another one is if suppose the amount is received towards the prior permission related, whether it is with or without prior permission, with or without registration. But if suppose ultimately if the MHA inquiry reveals that it is not diverted, but without proper registration, the amount has been received, utilized, and everything else has been done. In that case, the minimum penalty is a lakh rupee or 5% of the foreign contribution, whichever is higher. So first two is receipt and deposit. This third is with respect to utilization. Okay. And if suppose the donation is received in kind, that is in the form of goods, those goods value also we need to see, and accordingly the penalty will be there with respect to the accepting foreign contribution without proper registration or without proper prior permission. In this case, like almost amount received but not deposited, it is here 10,000 rupees or 2% of the foreign contribution, whichever is higher. And suppose the penalty is not paid, then what may happen? There could be further imprisonment and all those things. Prosecution will be initiated. Suppose if the amount is received without the knowledge of the donee, the transferring, still the penalty is applicable. Just because we have not asked the donor to transfer the fund, so we can't plead the guilty, saying that we are not aware of this particular transaction. The donor has given just like that. So there is no exception that the facts are not known to the recipient. So the moment it is received, there are penalties. Okay. And another thing is just to restrict the series of compounding, I mean the habituated compounding, what the law says, if the compounding is done now, I mean say one particular day, for next 3 years, any similar penalty or any similar non-compliance, they don't have option of going into the compounding, rather it will go into the adjudication, the prosecution. Okay, so that's why one has to clear, for any reason, if the compounding is done, they don't have luxury of repeating this every time. Always there is a cooling period of 3 years. Okay, so in case if there is no compoundable offense, like if the amount is not quantified or if it is not quantifiable, or the category is not falling into specified list of the compoundable transaction, then either CBI or the state police wing, which is concerned with the administration, that is we call it as crime investigation department. CID is what CBCID, that's what we call, right? So they will come into picture depending upon the value of foreign contribution. If the foreign contribution value is more than a crore rupee, and obviously CBI will come into picture. If it is less than 1 crore, the local police will come into picture. Okay. So the penalties, that is the criminal imprisonment and all these things, if we look at, so making any false statement or making any false declaration or submitting a false accounts, both receipts, payments, etc. So there is an imprisonment up to 3 years, or with fine, or with both. So here fine is not quantified, not specified. Naturally, the fine is subject to the discretion of the adjudicating authority. So naturally, this will go into the maybe bigger amount also, depending upon the amount involved in the contravention. Okay, and delivery or transfer or dealing with any of these shares, security, currency, etc. in contravention of any prohibitory orders issued by the MHA, because sometimes MHA, depending upon the sensitivity of the organization, they may pass order prohibiting the receipt or transferring the funds. So in that case, the penalty is either up to 3 years of imprisonment or with fine or with both. In this case, depending upon the quantifiability of the value, Additional fine also will be there with respect to market value of article, or if the amount is received in currency equal to that value is considered while determining the penalties. The penalty, I mean the fine, I mean monetary related fine. So who will do this monitoring? So basically, as I mentioning earlier, the Ministry of Home Affairs is the administrative authority who will do all the giving renewals or registrations or prior permissions, including monitoring. So MHA has constituted two monitoring units. So they will be responsible for all sensitivity analysis or risk assessment and also carrying the audits. But MHA doesn't do audit directly. They have selected outsourced agencies. They will come and do the audit. So basically their focus is who are the defaulters of the annual filing the annual return. Obviously there could be something fishy. So the first alert is non-filers, and basically any complaint has been received from the public that this organization is misutilizing or misappropriating the funds, or any other reports have come from the different enforcing agencies like income tax department. If they observe that the organization is misutilizing the funds, they may give a complaint to the MHA. Accordingly, the MHA may carry the detailed audit or detailed scrutiny, or they can do, order, they can also pass the order suspending the renewal, suspending the registration or prior permission, whatever the case may be. So what is the main purpose of this inspection is, one is to bring out the deficiency of the, the systems or the processes that is being followed by the organization. Accordingly, they can give their feedback. Of course, apart from feedback, there is a penalty as well. But at least they try to bring out the errors or they can spot the deficiencies. Accordingly, they want to bring up the systems up to the mark. And in case there are any willful violators, accordingly, they can do further investigation by appropriate investigating agency. Like, again, CBI may come into picture, or police may come into picture, or any other, regulatory agencies may come into picture. So whenever this monitoring unit is going to do any inspection or investigation, normally they give the advance intimation and they specify that these are the days, the auditors are going to come and do inspection. Please provide respective data and also do some, logistical arrangement. All those things anyway we need to take care. So even the inspecting officer has been vested with the power of seizing the records or accounts, etc. Also they can seize the record, seize the articles if the value is 25,000 or more. It means they can impound the records or the value of the articles and all those stuff. And obviously the inspecting officer has to produce this before a competent court, and the court can pass an order, seizing the books and etc. Then accordingly they can be kept in the custody of the inspection and investigating authority. Okay. So whenever there is an inspection, we have seen that they will give their observation report, and they expect that the organization has to give the suitable reply. Accordingly, they will proceed with the further investigation or further levying the penalty, etc. They can take the appropriate steps once they find out the inspection related report. So here, as I mentioned, CBI may be coming into picture. Once CBI comes again, incidental thing with respect to money laundering also can be attributed. So this may not stop here. If there is any criminal activity, both in terms of the sensitivity to the society, but they also may say, okay, this organization is facilitating money laundering. So they may take up this matter with the enforcement directorate also, because whenever there is a money laundering, the CBA or any other investigating agency, they have to transfer this case to the enforcement directorate. So we have to be cautious. One issue may turn out to be, into another, depending upon the severity of the issue and value involved in this particular matter. Then the government also may cancel the certificate of registration after, of course, giving the opportunity of being heard. whenever they find out like the accounts are falsified or there is no proper record is rendered, or the conditions with which the registration has been granted, if it is not properly complied, obviously the government, that is MHA, because whenever we use the word government, here the administrative department is MHA, they can cancel the certificate of registration or prior permission. Accordingly, again, all consequential things will follow. Okay. And sometimes, if the government think like the organization is not properly following the prudence of the country, I mean public interest and all these things are getting impacted, then also the government can invoke the cancellation provision. But whenever there is any cancellation is proposed, obviously the natural justice has to be given. I mean the opportunity of being heard has to be given, and accordingly they will give time and appropriate opportunity. One has to go and respond in terms of this particular thing. And the organizations can be suspended or cancel the registration for a period of 3 years or more. But generally the suspension is happened for 3 years, up to 3 years, and anything above they cancel the registration. That's how it will happen. Okay. And what if the registration is cancelled? Then all the amount lying in the bank account are obviously invested in any securities or FD, etc. They will be on the custody of the bank in which the bank account is being maintained. It means there will be a complete debit freeze. The organization cannot do any further transaction unless and until the bank receive appropriate intimation from MHA saying that the amount can be utilized subject to so and so conditions. Okay. Accordingly, the bank is going to be the custodian and going to monitor each and every transaction happening in this particular account. So then suspension, as I was mentioning, the government can suspend normally the registration up to 180 days, but generally they may do the extension of suspension for every 180 days. Okay. So during suspension, the association anyway cannot receive any fund contribution, and maximum 25% of the fund may be spent subject to prior approval of the MHA. So balance 75, it has to be spent only after any revocation of cancellation, revocation of suspension order. Until that time, maximum 25%, that too with the proper approval of the MHA, the organization can use the funds. Okay. As I was mentioning, now the government has given the concept of voluntary surrendering. So the organization, after exhausting all the fund, after proving that the entire fund has been properly utilized, the organization can approach the MHA for its cancellation, by voluntary surrendering. But generally they do the thorough review of the accounts just to ensure that there is no violation under the law. If there is any violation, again adjudication has to be done only after completion of the entire adjudication process or investigation process and making all the payments of penalties, then only the registration can be cancelled, surrendered. Okay. So these are the things I think I thought of submitting. Now, please, if there are any questions, I love to take up each one question by each one. So please help me if there are any questions that are there. I can take up one.
Yes, sir. We have some questions, sir. I'll share my screen, sir.
Yeah, please.
So is my screen visible, sir?
Yeah.
Something close to 14 to 15 questions. We'll take up one by one.
Yeah, sure. So if the first question says, if the funds are received from global donors such as UNICEF and these things for services rendered as global donors, do they come under FCRA? Just hold on, I'm trying to see this question completely. Okay. For services rendered, yeah, as I was mentioning, any amount received towards the rendering of services, obviously it will not fall under the concept of donation. It is the pure revenue received by the implementing organization. So it will be out of the concept of the foreign contribution. Okay. That way, the question one is for services, if any funds are received, it will not fall under the concept of donations. So it's a pure service receipt, and it is obviously out of the purview of FCRA. Question 2, if funds are received from abroad by a Section 8 company, which is set up by the central or state government, whether FCRA is applicable. Should the company which is set up for science and education by the government get a registration under FCRA? Generally, if it is a government related fund, like suppose we have seen the concept of care fund and all these things, right? So there, if it is a purely government controlled activity, there is no requirement of any FCRA registration, or even if it is required, generally government itself will give that. What we need to see is it a government department related or any specific fund which is otherwise exempted in FCRA? If there is no such exemption, naturally, even if it is set up by one of the organization which is indirectly owned or controlled by central or state government, it may require the FCRA registration. So we need to check that whether there is any specific notification given by the central government. By the way, state government, they may set up these funds, but central government has to give the appropriate exemption notification. So here, if the company is set up for science and education, if it is otherwise not exempted specifically under FCRA, it has to go for the FCRA registration. Okay. Then question number 3, what precautions should an Indian for-profit company take to ensure it is not covered under FCRA when rendering service by acting as implementing agency for Global Foundation as a paid service? Obviously, even if the organization is for profit, the moment the money is received towards the services, even if the funds are coming from abroad, it is not falling under FCRA. Naturally, there will be a service contract. So the service contract gives the scope of work. If the services are rendered according to that particular service contract, it is out of scope of the FCRA. So it will not be, any requirement of the compliance under FCRA. So for question 3 also, since it is a service related amount that is being paid, it is out of the purview of FCRA. Fourth one is, the FC should be used only for the purpose it was given. Will this rule apply for interest earned on the foreign contribution, or can it be used for administrative expenses or for other projects? So as I was mentioning in my presentation, interest also should go for the same purpose for which the principal has been utilized. If suppose the donor specifies that interest should be used only for this, then only for the project, that particular project only, that interest also has to be used. Otherwise, the interest can be used for project expenditure, but normally administrative expenditure within the 20% limit we can use. But just because it is interest, it cannot be used 100%. The same concept of up to 20% is applicable even for interest. So up to 20% of interest, it can be used for admin expenditure. Balance amount, that is minimum 80% or more, should be used towards the project expenditure. Okay. That is the summed substance is, if the donor specifies any project specific restriction of utilization, then interest should be used only for the project, that particular project. Otherwise, it can be used for alternative projects also. And in case of administrative expenditure, the 20% maximum threshold limit is applicable. Okay. Can you please scroll down? I think that question 5. Just I'm trying to read full. What if the contribution is received as share capital? Is there any limit for admin expenses? Be it share capital or specific donation, this admin expenditure cap is applicable. The moment share capital falls under the foreign contribution definition, naturally admin expenditure also should be accordingly, should be applied not more than 20%. Okay. In the what is the in the ISI, LSI, I don't know, maybe of those who are prevented from accepting foreign contribution, journalists are included. Okay, if the section largely I understand now, journalists are included. Obviously, journalists are also included because they may give some paid kind of articles. So journalist, cartoonist, columnist, all of them are included in the list of restricted persons under section 3. In the exception list, salary and wages are exempted. Does this mean journalist in India can accept foreign contribution as a remuneration for writing news column for foreign newspapers? Foreign newspapers, of course, they may do, but provided that foreign newspaper is not being circulated in India. If it is circulated in India, naturally the print regulations need to be followed. So as a remuneration from foreign source, the journalist can accept the money because it's not a foreign contribution. The amount is being received towards the services rendered. So it could be a lump sum fee or it could be a salary in any way. If it is a contribution, if the amount is received towards his services to the newspaper abroad, yes, naturally it is out of purview of FCRA. Accordingly, that is permissible. Audit fee, that question number 7. Audit fee paid is part of admin expenditure. Obviously, yes, because there is no direct correlation with the project. Accordingly, it is made. And sometimes the donor requests for a separate audit certificate towards utilization of their contribution. In such case, the audit fee can be treated as project expenditure and not as administrative expenditure. So, irrespective whether it is company, the organization itself has initiated this requirement, or the donor is asking for specific statement of audit. In any case, all audit fee is part of the admin expenditure only. So we need to accordingly see the limit. Okay. Question number 8. How about the share capital? That also to be received in separate bank account opened with SBI New Delhi main branch. Yeah. If it is share capital is falling in the definition of the foreign contribution, then naturally share capital need to be received through SBI New Delhi main branch only. That's why I was telling, whether it is a specific category or it is capital. In any case, SBI New Delhi main branch will come into picture so long the amount is a foreign contribution. Yeah. Question number 9. If company in India is a foreign subsidiary and having entire revenue from parent or group companies, example on cost plus basis, whether these companies become foreign sources. Yeah, being a foreign subsidiary will not make it as a foreign source. The only thing is whether the share capital is held in compliance of the FEMA, because here the entire capital is coming from a foreign parent entity, and the revenue is only independent issue. But the only question here we need to see is whether the subsidiary is issued its shares in compliance of the FEMA or not. Okay. So if it is issued in compliance of FEMA, obviously it is not a foreign source. The Indian subsidiary will not be called a foreign source so long the share capital is held in compliance of the FEMA. Okay. So towards the question number 9, obviously if the company is a foreign subsidiary and entire revenue is received from parent company, but revenue anyway is out of the foreign contribution concept. But if the entity is not holding issued its shares in compliance of FEMA, what will happen is the CSR funds that are being donated by this Indian subsidiary will amount to foreign contribution because it is not an exempted foreign source. Okay, that's what we need to see. Then question number 10. Social venture capital funds which invest in Indian social enterprises, that is in agriculture, edutech, etc., obtain their capital from global foundation. Do they need to have registration under FCRA? Should the invested company be FCRA registered? 10. I'm now talking about question number 10. Okay. So obviously, because social venture capital funds, if they are emanating from abroad, their capital contribution itself is falling into the definition of the foreign source. Then naturally, they have to, the Indian recipient entity has to register under FCRA. But suppose if it is a for-profit organization, if the Indian entity happens to be a for-profit organization, then again we need to look at the FDA regulations under FEMA. But if it is a non-profit organization, naturally it falls under the FCRA. Okay. Yeah. And another one is, I think it shows 12. Is there 11 is missed? Because I am seeing 10 and 12. I'm not sure if 11 is hidden somewhere.
are able to see 11. Sorry, 11 is, so the number is mismatched, it seems. So 12 will
Okay.
take it.
Yeah, okay. What if the foreign contribution received in a bank account without the knowledge from unknown source? Yeah, obviously, I told knowledge is not relevant. Receipt is what is relevant. So even if without knowledge of the donee, if the amount is received, naturally the liability and everything will follow. Okay. Number 13, son is working in a foreign country, sends a sum of 10 lakhs to his mother for her expenses. Whether receipt is covered under FCRA? Of course, no. But if the recipient happened to be a specified, restricted category, like suppose she is, in the form of she is electing she is being contested for any election, then naturally it will fall under the foreign source. So here we have to see the mother is falling into the specified category. If she is falling, obviously this particular thing is also need to be reported in form FC1. The receipt is not restricted, but disclosure is required. Okay, anything below 1 lakh, there is no requirement. But if the amount is going above 1 lakh, there is something called disclosure in form FC1. Within 30 days of receipt, the mother who is falling in the category of specified list, she has to file form FC1 to disclose this particular receipt. Okay, so it is not covered under restricted category under FCRA, but disclosure is required. But if the mother is not falling into any specified list of the persons as given in section 3, then this requirement is also not there. But generally, on a hindsight, what we always convey is better to file this form FC1 even for non-covered people, because sometimes we see the definition is very vague. The requirement of filing form FC1 is sometimes is very vague. We are always advising, better disclosure is always comfortable rather than, debating on that particular matter. Yeah. Then question number 14. An NGO receives foreign contribution in accordance with the Act, but is unable to utilize the amount either in part or full for the. Sorry, I think my window is covered here. So I'm trying to see this. 1 minute, please. Yeah. So an NGO receives foreign contribution in accordance with the Act, but is unable to utilize the amount either in part or full for the purpose which it is received, because circumstances beyond its control. In such case, what are the options available for NGO? Okay. Once the amount is received, it has to be utilized. If suppose there is no opportunity of utilization, maybe they can postpone the utilization for next year. But still, if that is also not possible, they have to make a request to MHA that please take this amount from me and you engage this particular fund. They can't voluntarily transfer to any other organization, because after September 2020, as I was mentioning, there is absolutely freeze on any subgranting from one organization to another. So it's not possible. So only with the approval of the Ministry of Home Affairs, this fund can be utilized to somebody. So obviously, until that, the money has to be lying in the respective NGO account who has received the amount. Okay. And question number 50 is why natural justice is not followed when rejecting the renewal application. Of course, generally the MHA will give you a notice that these are the reason why they are trying to reject it, and we can make a further request. But normally the natural justice concept is not applicable for renewal application for the simple reason, when they find that there is a reason behind rejection, because generally they carry specific investigation or inspection before the renewal application. That itself will throw idea that why they are reluctant to give the renewal application. But we can't say strictly it's a natural justice, that is opportunity of being heard is given or not given for renewal application, because naturally there would be a report prior to rejection of the renewal application. Sometimes the renewal may be rejected because it is not filed within time, or FCRA returns are not filed. There could be multiple reasons. So that itself shows the deficiency from the particular company or organization. Okay. So question number 16. Some organizations, because they are unable to open the FCRA account in SBA, they were not able to file Form FC4. Of course, this issue is there. So until unfortunately the system, the way it is presently designed, unless this SBI New Delhi main branch account is open, system is not permitting filing of any return. So we have to struggle with this. In few of our clients, we have handled this issue. So we said like you have to open your New Delhi main branch account at least now, so that the system will enable you to file this. But suppose we have counted one situation where the registration itself is lapsed and the organization is not willing to apply for any renewal. Even then also there is an issue of this particular New Delhi main branch account. So the system is becoming non-negotiable in all the cases until and unless this particular bank account is open. System is not permitting filing of any return. That's what we need to observe. Okay. I think the 17 also same case that I already mentioned. And 18 is with respect to Indian company, which is 100% wholly owned subsidiary of foreign company, sets up a trust for implementing its CSR objective. Should the trust obtain FCRA approval? Of course, not required, so long Indian company has completed the FDA compliances. Because Indian company, the moment it has completed FDA related regulations, it is not a foreign source. The moment it is not a foreign source, the CSR fund donation to the trust is obviously out of FCRA requirement. Hence, the trust is not required to have any FCRA approval. So the moot point here is whether Indian company has followed FDA compliances or not. If so, it is not a foreign source. The Indian company, even if it is wholly owned subsidiary of foreign company, it is not a foreign source. Naturally, it is out of the purview of the FCRA. Okay. Question number 19. Is it mandatory to open FCRA account in SBI New Delhi prior to applying for FCRA registration? Of course, yes. After September 2020, when this concept has been made implemented, naturally, first the bank account has to open, but the SBI New Delhi, what they do is they will keep all freezes, debit and credit fees will be there. So no credit transaction will be permissible, but the account has to open. The account number has to be disclosed in the application for renewal, application for regular registration or prior permission. Only then the either registration or prior permission can be granted. Okay. In case of question number 12, FC received from unknown source, how to proceed? Should the amount be refunded or transferred to the same authority? Okay. No. Basically here, unfortunately, as per the FCRA law, there is no consider refund. The moment amount is received, the only opportunity is we have to plead for the ignorance, and the amount has to be transferred only to the central government. It cannot go back to the donor. Unfortunately, I mean, unless the MHA permits any refund, there is no question of refunding at all. If you see, the whole purpose of FCRA law is to receive and utilize. There is nothing called refunding. Even if the contract says the money has to be refunded, there is no legal provision. So now bank can refund the money to the foreign donor. Okay, so it has to go back to only the authority specified by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Okay. Okay, interesting question. Question number 21. It says, if it is a cryptocurrency from foreign source, will it be a foreign contribution? Of course, legally only fiat currency need to be received. Cryptocurrency cannot be received. It is another offense as far as the present regulations are concerned, because it's not considered to be a currency. So any receipt of cryptocurrency is already banned in terms of this thing. Of course, there is a conflicting decision that have come from Supreme Court, RBI, again AD Bank. They have given different instructions. But strictly speaking, as of now, there is an unexpressed ban on cryptocurrency. So there is nothing called cryptocurrency donations. So it cannot be received. I'm saying number, but it is not refreshed, I believe. If you can refresh. Any problem?
Any more questions, Selva? Over.
Those were the questions, sir.
Nice.
Okay.
That's the end of it, sir.
Great.
Great job, sir. Yes.
One question's on question number 18 continuations. Only one thing that came up now. 1 minute.
Huh.
So copy that one. Yeah, this one, sir. It is follow up to question number 18, it seems.
It's not visible on the screen. I think if you can share, I think we will see that. Okay.
Visible now, sir?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the continuation of section 18, question number 18, the FDA compliance is only for section 21J6. The FDA compliance is targeting companies like HDFC, ICICI. No, basically now when I see this HDFC, ICICI, I mean to say, I think the China investments falling here. Okay. But in a simplest way, if the FDA compliance is made as far as the FEMA is concerned, then only the capital is out of the purview. I mean, the company which has received such capital is out of purview of FCRA. So whether the compliance is with respect to the eligible investor or eligible investee, eligible sector, the percentage of the capital, permissible, all those things are sacrosanct numbers or sacrosanct conditions. So long the respective conditions laid down under FEMA FDA rules now, that is NDA rules we call it, right? So so long the rules are complied with respect to FDA receipt, then if it is complied properly under FEMA, naturally the Indian company which has received such capital is out of purview of FCRA. So everything, whether it is donor, not donor, investor, investee, sector, filing of forms, everything we need to see as far as the FEMA FDA compliance is concerned. So if those things are taken care, naturally the investing entity is falling out of the purview of FCRA. That's what we need to understand.
Okay.
I believe I think all the questions
Okay,
are
Mr. Selva,
So
can we conclude?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you very much, sir. A great job from you, Mr. Murali Krishna Garu. Your experience and exposure with very explicit explanations has made the subject very easy. And in my opinion, actually, it is overwhelming for me to see so many queries. That shows the interest that the members have in this subject also. And the practical difficulties, definitely, there are not many experts in this field. So being an expert in this field, taking out time and having passion to serve for the alma mater and the member colleagues, it's a great job from you. So heartfelt thanks on behalf of the SIRC to you for your time and your presentation. I thank all the members also for active participation. Our efforts in conducting such programs is really what's called worth it if your participation is more and more. And in these days of automation, it is badly required that the opportunities for professions are widened. So this is one such initiative wherein you can widen your opportunity in the profession through this area also, because it is not much tapped in area. Many are not practicing in this area. So this FCRA, especially to CSR, is another what's called specialized topic for the day, which we are very happy for the extraordinary participation by the members. Around 22 questions is not an easy thing, and definitely you have made use of it, and thank you for participating, all the members. And I thank my chairman in absentia for conducting this program on this day. Despite being busy with the tax audit assignments, the members' participation and your interest in taking out time as a speaker has made this program really worthy. So I thank the chairman for choosing this topic and the speaker. So with this, I thank Mr. Selva for technical support, and also the back office, our additional director Paramsivan and team for the job that they are doing from back office. Thank you one and all. Stay safe, stay happy, healthy. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much once more, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Can I exit?
Yes, sir. We'll end that session. Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a